Hello, I'm Frost and welcome to my latest Age of Wonders Planetfall video. In this video, I am going to be covering the brand new paid DLC, Star Kings, along with a free game update that comes with it, Triceratops. Welcome back. So between the paid DLC, Star Kings, and Triceratops, which is the game update that applies to everybody with the base game, there is a lot to cover, but I will try to be as precise and concise as possible. Right, so first job is I need to jump up into my little box, as always. Here I am, up in the corner, and here is our motley crew. These are the Oathbound. They are the new faction that comes with the Star Kings DLC. Now, the thing with the Oathbound is they have a very unique ability, and that ability is to foretell the future. They can see the future coming, and so all of their skills are kind of based around this. And the skills are things like precognition, which is can be available as a doctrine early game. And in fact, if I just jump right up into my society research right now, sorry, my military society research. There we go. Right, all the way back here at the beginning, people's contracts up here. And you can see all pre-battle predictions, all battles units start battle with 1 stack of precognition. What this actually means is that the first attack on the unit will fail completely. And so this gives you the ability, as these units are primarily melee, to be able to kind of rush into the enemy, knowing that their first attack on you, not the first turn, their first attack on any one unit with this doctrine will be negated. So that's kind of really powerful. And then your seers, which are these dudes up the back here, which we'll come on to when we look at the units very briefly, are the ones that have the ability to then put this onto the units, which are your paladins, which are your fighting units, which are all guys, by the way, in battle suits. So these are kind of battle mech units. Then the other things they have is providence. So providence means that they can tell what the enemy is going to do, and in which case then they always get a critical hit. And then there is one last ability which is used by the seers, which is called fatalism. And fatalism is you are basically dooming your enemy to failure, and so they will fumble, etc., etc. You kind of get the general idea, and it creates for really interesting gameplay. And if we actually look at this kind of the tier 1 unit down here, this is our aspirant. So he's only got a tiny little battle suit. He's not got a big one yet, so he's aspiring to be into a bigger one. And the thing about these guys is that they are melee and also ranged, but they have this thing called first strike. And what this means is that in Overwatch, they get the first hit, which is very different from any other unit that we've had before. So that's kind of interesting. Then with a strategic operation, you can actually, once these guys get to prime rank, you can then upgrade them to a tier 2. And that will be either a protector or a warden. So then we have this guy here with a really big sword. Now, this is our tier 2 unit. Here we go, the protector. What is unusual about this guy is that he can hit flying units. Obviously, he's got a very big sword, so he can reach up high enough to take a thwack at things. So that's his kind of big advantage. His downside, though, is he has exposed flanks. So it's something to be aware of when you're using this unit. And early on in the game, there is a mod which you get right at the beginning of your strategic, military military skills, is you have this thing called Oath of Loyalty. And as you can see, it works very similarly to, I'm really messing up my words today. It works very similar to the Kirko shield, the Swarm shield, except it's not shield, it's armor. And so every unit that has this mod that's basically bunched together get this +1 armor, and this stacks as well, which is kind of really useful. So the idea is early game, you use your protectors up the front here, and then your aspirants come around the sides, and then they create this Oath of Loyalty, and they create this little kind of shield of +1 armor that stacks. So that's really cool. Then you move up to your kind of your Augur, which is your first kind of support unit, it's your tier 2 support unit. And as well as doing entropy damage, this is the secondary type of damage. The primary type of damage is arc. So the entropic is very similar to the Heritor Secret Tech, if you're familiar with that, with one of the DLCs. I think it was the Revelations, we had the Heritor. Then you can see we've got Gift of Adamants, okay, which gives them Last Stand, which is kind of really, really good. If you know your unit's going to die, you can kind of protect them. We've got Fatalism, which I talked about earlier. And we then have this thing called a record keeper. So if you have the guy in your stack, then everybody gets 25% bonus experience. So if you're trying to turn your aspirants into protectors or wardens, then it's really good to have an augur in your stack. So coming on to the warden here, this is your one unit that is aimed towards range. So this guy doesn't do any kind of melee, he's just pure range. But he has this thing called Warden's Banner. Now what Warden's Banner does, which is a little bit unusual, is you basically throw this banner out, similar to like the Shakan, they have their mod that does that, their ability that does that as well. And what it does is it provides a random choice of which unit will get a buff. Now there is a doctrine that allows you to then specify which unit there is, but it's actually quite high up the skill tree. But there you go, so you have the Warden. Then moving up, then we have our next level of Seer, which is here, and he has this thing called Lash of Adversity, which actually bounces across 2 hexes and makes your attacks, the enemy fumble, which is very, very powerful. You've got the Gift of Providence, which I mentioned earlier, which guarantees you a critical hit. And then he's also got quite an effective entropy weapon, and also has the Record Keeper. So that kind of gives you the general idea of where these guys go. Now, this unit here is unusual because he's a tier 3 unit, he's a flying unit. He's the only kind of main flying unit in the Oathbound. And he's got both a melee and a ranged attack. So he's pretty powerful and pretty effective. Then at the back here, in his little circle that's going around him, we have the Diviner, which is kind of your high-end Seer. And this guy basically does everything that the Augur could do, like precognition, fatalism, but he does it in an AoE effect. So he does it within a radius. And once again, very, very powerful, comes with this entropy damage and has a record keep. And then right at the top here is our star of the show. This is our top tier unit, which is the Exemplar, which is your huge, big battle mech. And this guy does basically AoE damage with a melee. As you can see, it deals 50% of damage to enemy units adjacent to the user. So he kind of just has these big flying swoops. And yeah, so pretty powerful units. Then if you look at the mods, most of the mods are based around, so you've got the Oath of Loyalty, you have the Oath of Devotion, which gives you immunity to mind control, and gives you Last Stand, which is something that, like we saw with the Seers, can give you. You can actually get that with a mod. But what's interesting is you have things like Plight Mitigator, and this unit, it dispels all negative status effects at the beginning of the next turn, which is really, really powerful. So this is like only a Tech 2. So, really, really useful kind of unit. Mod. And then on things like Oath of Loyalty, we've got Oath of Courage. There we go. And this is a little bit different. What this does is allow you to rush your enemy and use their turns against them, so you can get much closer to them. Yeah, so some interesting mods there. And then we have some really good arc mods as well. So right at the very beginning, so if we take, for example, our Aspirant here, when you start the game, you grab a template. Here we go. Now I'm using Celestian. I'll come on to doctrines texts in a minute. So Oath of Loyalty, static build-up module, nice simple module, and then give him some kind of defense. And the Celestian work really well with this, as do the Synthesis. Both of those secret texts benefit from being very defensive, and I've got this guy going to be wandering off in a minute. Being very defensive, and that's what you want with melee units that are going to be rushing into battle. Other elements that are worth mentioning very quickly as well is that if I can find a hero, our heroes have this ability to become lords, and it takes 5 points. And let me actually just look at, and what you can do is you can assign it to a colony. So if we look at this colony right here, you can see that my commander here, Paula Din, has got the Agrarian Lord ability. And what it does is it gives you 2 bonuses. It gives you a bonus that's always active, and then another bonus that is only active at 50% capacity when your hero is not in the colony's domain. Now you can actually buff that, and there is a structure you can build, if I can bring this back, called a throne. And there we go. And if you get the throne, then the colony will still receive 50% of the hero in the domain bonus, even when the hero is outside of the colony's domain. So that kind of ties in with that ability. So, some pretty good buffs there, and that kind of gives you an overview of the Oathbound. So melee, see the future, create havoc for everybody else. Okay, so then the other element that we have are the Mycellians. So the Mycellians are kind of our new enemies that we get to take on. And the Mycellians, the story behind them, the lore, is that they were originally working on a synthetic meat substitute using fungi. And this fungi became sentient and took over the plant machinery and became mushroom cyborgs. Now, these guys are, really bad for the Oathbound because they do biological attacks, and they do it with AoE. They do loads of AoE damage, especially the kind of high tier unit creates havoc. And they have also this ability to immobilize, which if you've got melee units, is kind of messes up your game a little bit. So Mycellians, once again, very creative from Triumph Studios, and there we go. So these are the new guys. Then we have the Apostates, which are essentially kind of the dark seers. They're the dark version of the Oathbound. So you have the dark seers and the blackguard. So the dark seers being the equivalent of the seers, and then the blackguards being the opposite of the Oathbounds. And these are guys who rejected their oath of protection. Now, unfortunately, I've been playing 2 or 3 games with the Oathbound, but I never really came across these guys. Maybe I just picked the wrong planets or whatever. But I can give you a sort of quick overview that you have these Chaos Witches that have that are T3 units with a Chaos Blade. They do high impact stagger. They do +5 damage to random resistance channels, so they're very difficult to protect against. You've got your Blackguard, which are your fighting units. They're T2, they do +20% damage, and they also have Immobilize, similar to the Mycellians. And then going up, you have these kind of Blackguard Tyrants, which are T4s, and they have this thing called Instill Anarchy, which creates chaos within the ranks. And apparently these guys, I haven't seen it because, like I said, I haven't come across it, they gather in these things called Dark Towers. And if you complete these towers, then you can get one of these Apostates units into your ranks. So here you go. So that kind of covers pretty much what the DLC gives you. But then we come on to the Triceratops update. Now the Triceratops update actually gives us a lot of stuff for the base game. And the biggest thing that we get is the Galactic Empire system. So I'm just going to jump out of this game and then bring this up for you. And so we're now on the main menu, and as you can see, I now have this extra option here called My Galactic Empire. Now, essentially, what this does is that before you had individual planets that you could do, but there was kind of no real progression system to that, and the Galactic Empire gives us that. So what it does is allow us to chain loads of different planets and planet or games together and get bonuses as a consequence of doing various quests and so forth. So as you can see at the top here, we've got Star Map, got Hall of Heroes, Progression, and Reliquary. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's basically where you store your relics. I've only been using one hero. I've been using my Oathbound. Like I said, I've been trying to get up to speed with my Oathbound, getting to know these guys really well. But anyway, so what we're going to do is, you can see I've done 2 planets already here. We're going to go on and conquer a new world. So what happens is we get some random selections. So I've got Fortuna Mort, Echo of Iden, and Nicalia. And I can randomize the planets, so I can switch them up if I'm not happy with these planets. Now, each one of these planets has its own traits, secondary objectives, and experience. So first of all, the traits. So the traits are similar to what you used to get with the planets, but we only had a selection of like 4 or 5. Now there's much more of a combination. So for example, this is a shattered world, so we've got geothermal hazards, and teleporters are common. Then we have things like an autonomous network, and we have quality over quantity. So it basically puts a debuff on tier 1 and tier units, tier 1 and tier 2 units. So you have to kind of really favor the high-end units. Then we have secondary objectives. So these give us a bonus towards renown. So renown is the new currency that we'll be able to use in-game to be able to add extra units. And this will make more sense when I come on to it a little bit later. The other thing we get with these secondary objectives is that sometimes, like here, you can see I've kind of got a little victory cup. And what this does is it gives us an extra victory condition. So in this case, there's a Cyanambaran creature manifested in your embassy. So each Holy Crusade commander defeated gives you substantial renown and experience boost. So basically, if you defeat these Holy Crusade commanders, you win the game. So now you don't necessarily end up having to play every game to like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 turns. You may be able to do it very, very quickly by just quickly doing this one secondary objective. And then finally, we have experience down here. And what this does is this goes towards your bonuses that you will get at the end of the game, which then carry forwards into your progression. Then you can then select different commanders. So at the moment I've only got Paula Din, but you can see here that I can recruit a new hero, and I can pick one of them from the standard library, or I can pick one of my custom heroes if I want to. And so therefore you don't always have to fight with the same hero, the same commander. You can use different commanders to suit the objectives and the planets that you're going to be fighting on. Now somewhere in here there's a penguin planet. I haven't found it yet, but I'm really looking forward to that, because if you know my channel, we like the penguins on this channel. So then if I go back and we look quickly at the Hall of Heroes, so you can see, like I said, I've only got Paula Din right now, but I can bring in other heroes if I want to. And now we move on to our progression. So as you use different heroes and different secret tech, you progress. And what this does is this opens up new items that you can bring into battle with you, which you can then buy in-game, during the game, with renown. So it's kind of like a big circular loop. So now you've seen this menu, it will make more sense. So when I go back and do Conquer New World, and I'll pick Fortuna Most, we'll select our commander, we'll just pick and go on to next. We get to this point where we can choose our requisition items. So as I've progressed, I've unlocked various items down this list. So we have units, we have operations, and we have mods. So I can say, right, for this planet, I want to take with me an eviscerator. I may want to use my Vorpal sniper, and also I may want to use maybe I want some Psyfish in there, so let's take a Siren as well. And as you can see, I'll have to acquire 250 renown in the game to then be able to unlock the Oathbound Eviscerator and then be able to buy it in game and add it to my units. And then the same applies to my operations. So I'm really going to need a healing surge for this. I think it's going to be really important. I'm going to want Embrace of Darkness as well. I want to do loads of damage. I'm going to take my Shredder Bomb. And then same with the mods, and go, you know what, I'm going to want Mark of the Dark Sun for this one. And I'm going to also want probably Eyes of Eternity, because Sinumbra is going to be a big player in this particular game. And then we can launch the game. And then, as I said, once we get renown within the game, which we get from completing secondary objectives, then we can then get these units into the game. So yeah, very interesting how that plays out. And then the very last thing is we have our reliquary, where we have our relics. Now these relics we acquire by doing something called Grail configurations. Now Grail configurations are essentially a quest within the game that pops up normally early to mid game. They're very straightforward, and they're in 4 stages. And basically what they do is they just kind of amalgamate a lot of things that we do in game already. So you have stage 1, which is construct the scanner. And that's exactly the same as getting a construction quest for like the growth or, you know, the Psyfish, etc. It works exactly the same way. Then we have to find the cipher. And so the way we can do that is we can either buy ciphers from an NPC faction, like the growth or the Psyfish or the Forgotten. And we can also do it from going and doing an exploration site. And now when you go into an exploration site, you have the opportunity to find cipher before you actually go into battle. Then you move on to stage 3. That's just basically the same as a research quest. You just have to do some research. And then you get to stage 4, where you actually have to go to an anomaly and then fight a wildlife faction. Do all those things, and you then get a Grail configuration. And you can then, which is basically a doctrine, which you can then unlock in your future planets. So there you go. So that kind of covers this whole progression thing, the Galactic Empire. I think it's a really good addition to the game. It kind of gives you meaning, so you're not just doing just random planets. You now have kind of a purpose, and gives you specific goals to do. And yeah, as I said, great addition to the game. Then we're going to come on to some other items, and for that I need to jump back into the game, so bear with me. Right, so what we have now, we now have a new sector type called residential sectors, and each one of these looks very different for each of the different factions. As you can see, I've got loads of little habitats, houses here, and what these residential sectors do is they give us extra bonuses as well as extra sectors. So before, your sector limit was 4 sectors per colony, and you could only build your sectors up to 2 sectors away from your main colony. That has now changed. You can now have up to 6 sectors, and then you can then build up to 4 sectors away if your new sector is adjacent to a residential sector. So for example, here in Ragsdale Lake, I've got Quiet Willows, Keeper's Summit, then I have this residential exploitation here, Pearly Meadows. So once I get to 20 colonists for Ragsdale Lake, I will then have, the moment I have residential exploitation level 1, I'll have the ability to build a 5th sector. And I can build it now in Skypiercer Peaks, which I would not have been able to do before because it's more than 2 sectors away. Then if I get a level 2 exploitation on here, then when I get to 24 colonists, then I can build a 6th sector, and I can build that in Celadon Heights. So you can kind of like really expand a lot further. And if we go quickly to Ragsdale Lake, and let me see if I can bring this up. Let's see it. There we go. We've got Pearly Meadows here, and as you can see, there we go. So it's currently at level 1, and what it does is it gives us +1 income for all of our, of food, energy, production, and research. So yeah, really, really interesting that element of it. There is something else I need to mention as well, which I haven't mentioned before. Let me bring it up. Let me find the right column just very, very quickly. So yeah, that covers residential exploitations. There we go, Dam Master. We have the ability now to have this thing called Archive of Deeds. Now this is specific to the Oathbound, I forgot to mention it. But what it gives you is the ability to put in chronicler slots. So these chronicler slots then allow you to generate extra revenue. And if we actually go to one that's already active, and we go to the people here, you can see, there we go, I've got my chronicler slots down here, and so I'm generating an extra 12 energy, extra 12 research, and an extra 6 happiness by having this kind of archive as well. So I forgot to mention that earlier on. I really apologize, but at least I got it in here. Right, so we've covered the residential sectors. Hopefully you got the idea of what that's about. Basically, we can expand into further territory. Now, quickly run through a bunch of other stuff that has also been released. Colonizers. Now, colonizers, if you recall, used to be in your society research, and they used to be, you have to research it, it'd be in frontier facilities right here. As you can see, it's now gone. The reason for that is that before, everybody always had to train frontier facilities first. Now you can train your doctrine first, or you can go straight towards area surveillance operation effectiveness if you want to. And now the way that it's unlocked is the moment you have at least 4 colonists, you will then be able to then build a colonizer in that colony. Next up, we have transit infrastructure. Now, transit infrastructure, if you remember, it doubles the amount of movement points that you have within your domain. That has now been nerfed in that now it only applies across roads. So, for example, if I grab this guy here, you can see he's only got kind of very limited movement. If I go, so I'm trying to get off a road, so you can see that if I go away from a road, it just constantly wants to follow the road all the time. So the moment you're on a road, then you get really good transit infrastructure. You can see I get all the way over to Hardnell Memoriam. But if I try and go off of that, then I am immediately restricted. So just something to be aware of, that now you can only double your distance by using actually roads. Orbital relays were really unused, and the reason why was, unlike a teleport, you can only use it once per turn. So if you're trying to get 6 armies or six stack of armies through, it would take 6 turns. They've now changed it so that you can now use it twice per turn. So they've doubled the amount of throughput rate you can now put through your orbital relays. Hazards. Now hazards used to take 3 turns to remove. They now only take 1 turn, which is great. So that's really helped a lot. And then because these guys have become battle suits, all my guys here, all the other races now have battle suits as well. So that's Phoenix Walker, the Dvar Phoenix Walker, I've got to look at the list here, the Vanguard Walker, the Imperial Walker, the Dvar Baron, the Dvar Bulwark, the Assembly Wrecker, Heavy Trooper, and now all considered battle suits, as some of the mods are relevant only to battle suits. And there's also a doctrine in your military research, which is here, which is his combat manuscripts. There's a battle suit tuning, there we go. So Oath of Devotion, there we go. The Battlesuit Defensive Protocol therefore now applies to these units that I mentioned before. If you have like training and you have, let's say, Vanguard units, you can then use this tactical operation with them, and also some mods that are only specific to them. Then the colony interface is updated. So if we look at the colony now, what we have is this brilliant thing. Is right here, you have this little box here, and when you put it down, you can now see what bonuses you get for things like landmarks, and what bonuses they give to units that you build in this colony. So that's a really, really good change. I'm really happy about that. The units now, we kind of get a little bit more information from the units down on the left-hand side. It's a little bit more detailed, especially when it comes to resistances, which we didn't have before. And then we now have these kind of little icons up here in the corner, which kind of give you an idea. That's like a tier 2 armor. This is a tier 1, a tier 3, but you can't see it through the things. And that's like a tier 2, a tier 3, sorry. But the idea is you can see straight away that this is a shield mod, this is a defense mod, etc. And also some of the information above the unit now is a little bit more descriptive. And that's all thanks to Tibbles the Cat, who made this as a mod, and Triumph Studios actually imported it. Then, what else do we have? Oh yeah, now finally, as the last thing, we have a huge balance pass. Now, I'm not going to even cover it in this because we would be here for another hour. I'm going to link it in the dev notes and description below, but basically every single faction, every single secret text, it's had a big balance pass. They're not big changes, but you know, if you play a particular faction a lot, you should take a look at it. Wow, I'm out of breath. Okay, hopefully I got you up to date with everything. I forgot to say in the middle of the video, please like, subscribe, and all that kind of good stuff. Hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications of new updates. I am exhausted by that. That was a lot to cover in one go, but hopefully you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching. Until the next one. Bye.